Ghostly tales, yet mirrors of human life. Hey, everyone! Welcome to Encountering Chinese. Ghostly Tales from Zhai. Today, I'm going to tell you a story called Continuation of the Yellow Millet Dream. In ancient China, there was a belief among the common people that after death, souls would journey to the underworld for judgment. If a person had performed many good deeds during their lifetime, they might be judged to be reborn into a wealthy and noble family or become revered as a deity worthy of worship. On the other hand, those who committed numerous wrongdoings could be judged to be reborn into a poor family or transformed into domesticated animals. The wrongdoers from the mortal realm would also face severe punishments in the underworld, where the severity of their punishments would correspond to the extent of their misdeeds. Sometimes, people would use phrases like, up the knife mountain, down into the oil cauldron, when making solemn vows, reflecting the connection to the punishments in the underworld. The story we are about to tell today contains this very concept. Special note: some parts of this story might make you uncomfortable, so please listen according to your own discretion. In Fujian, there was a Jiren, a successful candidate in the imperial examination, surnamed Zhang. Let's call him Zhang for now. One year, Zhang passed the imperial examination and became a jinshi, filled with joy. He then invited 2 or 3 fellows who have also become jinshi to the outskirts of the city for a leisurely trip. By chance, they heard about a fortune teller residing at the Pilu Monastery, so they all rode their horses there to seek divination. Upon arriving at the monastery, they found the fortune teller and paid their respects before taking their seats. Seeing their triumphant expressions, the fortune teller understood that they must have encountered good fortune, so he flattered them with a few words. Zhang, fanning himself with a folding fan, smiled slightly and asked the fortune teller, "Will I become a high-ranking official in the future?" The fortune teller put on a serious face and said, "I assure you, you can be a prime minister for 20 years during a peaceful era." Zhang was overjoyed upon hearing this, feeling proud and satisfied. Just then, a light rain began to fall from the sky. Zhang and his companions sought shelter in a monk's quarters to avoid the rain. In the quarters, they noticed an elderly monk sitting there. The old monk had deep eye sockets and a prominent nose. Sitting on a cushion, he exuded an air of arrogance and didn't bother to greet them. After paying their respects to the old monk, Zhang and his companions found him uninteresting and sat on the beds, engaging in separate conversations. Upon hearing what the fortune teller had said earlier, Zhang's companions congratulated him, predicting that he would undoubtedly become a prime minister in the future. Filled with pride, Zhang pointed at his companions and said, "If I become a prime minister, the first thing I'll do is recommend my father-in-law, Elder Zhang, to be the governor of Yingtian Prefecture. I'll also arrange for my cousins to become generals or military officers. Even our old family servant will get a high-ranking position like a commander or something. Once I've settled things for my family, my wish will be fulfilled." Laughter erupted from those present upon hearing this. After a while, the rain outside intensified. Feeling bored and a bit tired, Zhang lay down on the bed, wanting to take a short nap. Suddenly, he saw 2 eunuchs dispatched from the palace standing before him, holding an imperial edict. The eunuchs unfolded the edict and read it aloud, saying that His Majesty the Emperor summoned Zhang, the Grand Tutor, back to the court to discuss important national matters. Filled with pride, Zhang quickly got up and walked toward the palace. He stood in the court, speaking eloquently. As the emperor listened to him, he smiled in approval, even unconsciously leaning forward. The emperor engaged in a gentle conversation with him for a long time and then ordered that all promotions and demotions of officials below the third rank would be decided by Zhang. Immediately, the emperor bestowed upon Zhang an embroidered robe, a jade belt, and a fine steed for his use. Dressed in the robe and belt, Zhang thanked the emperor and left the palace. When he returned home, he found that his residence had transformed completely. The new house featured painted beams and intricately carved rafters, exuding an air of opulence. Zhang himself couldn't comprehend how he had suddenly reached this level. But whenever he twirled his beard and softly called out, the numerous attendants would respond in unison like thunder echoing. Soon, ministers from the court flocked to his home to congratulate him, bringing various overseas treasures as gifts. They nodded and bowed to Zhang, showering him with flattery. Visitors streamed in continuously, from high-ranking officials to lower-ranking ones, all coming to pay their respects. When high-ranking officials arrived, Zhang rushed to greet them. For officials of a lower rank, he bowed and exchanged a few words. For even lower officials, he merely nodded in acknowledgement. The governor of Shaanxi sent 10 singing and dancing maidens, all of them beautiful women. Among them, 2 stood out, Niao Niao and Xian Xian, both receiving special favor from Zhang. Whenever Zhang had time off at home, he spent the whole day enjoying their performances. One day, Zhang suddenly remembered the assistance he had received from the wealthy local Wang Ziliang when he was poor. Now that he held a high position, he wondered why he shouldn't help Wang Ziliang, who was still struggling. The next morning, he wrote a letter to the emperor, recommending Wang Ziliang and asking for a position of assistant minister for him. The emperor, upon reading Zhang's letter, promptly issued an imperial decree approving the recommendation and promptly promoted Wang Ziliang. Zhang then recalled Guo Taipu, with whom he had some minor grievances. He summoned Mr. Li, an assistant minister, and Chen Chang, an imperial attendant, to discuss his intentions with them. The next day, memorials denouncing Guo Taipu were presented to the emperor, and the emperor immediately issued an edict stripping Guo Taipu of his position. Zhang achieved his desires by returning kindness with kindness and repaying grievances with vengeance, leaving him with a heart full of contentment. One day, by chance, Zhang was passing through the streets on the outskirts of the city when a drunken man accidentally collided with his entourage. He immediately ordered his men to capture the drunkard and bring him to the capital's magistrate, where the man was swiftly beaten to death with a cane. People who lived adjacent to his estate and owned fields adjacent to his land feared his power, and they presented him with the most fertile plots. Gradually, his wealth could almost rival that of the national treasury. Soon, Niao Niao and Xian Xian both passed away, leaving Zhang deeply saddened and longing for them. But suddenly, he remembered a girl from his neighbor's house he had seen many years ago. She was extraordinarily beautiful, and Zhang was enamored by her. He had proposed several times to acquire her as a concubine, but due to his limited wealth, he couldn't fulfill his wish. Luckily, with his newfound fortune, he could finally achieve his desire. He instructed several capable servants to forcefully deliver money to the neighbor's house. Before long, those servants returned with the girl in a sedan chair. Zhang invited her out of the sedan and noticed she had become even more stunning since he last saw her. Zhang often looked back on his life and felt satisfied. Another year passed, and officials in the court began to murmur privately, indicating that some held resentment towards Zhang. However, these individuals dared not voice their concerns openly, and Zhang was too arrogant to pay them any mind. At this time, Scholar Bao of the Longtu court submitted a denouncing memorial to the emperor, roughly saying, "In my personal opinion, Zhang is nothing more than a dissolute character who revels in drinking and gambling, a commoner of the marketplaces." A single phrase he uttered that pleased your majesty earned him your trust and favor. Now, his father and son have both risen to high-ranking positions, reaching the pinnacle of favor. However, he refuses to exert effort for the governance of the state and shies away from selfless dedication. His actions cannot repay the kindness you have shown him. Moreover, he frequently acts recklessly and tyrannically oppresses the common people. His sins are too numerous to count, surpassing even the number of his hairs. Positions in the court are treated like commodities by him. He evaluates their value based on the quality of the office, setting a high or low price. Both civil and military officials seek his patronage to secure promotions. He calculates gains and losses based on the gifts brought by visitors, treating official positions as if they were commodities traded in a market. He has an abundance of sycophants and countless followers who look up to him and revere him. For those exceptional individuals and virtuous ministers who refuse to flatter him, he either sends them to desolate areas for service or directly strips them of their titles and expels them from the court. If officials refuse to comply, they will incur the wrath of this deceitful and villainous power. If officials dare to offend him with their words, he will demote them to distant lands where wild beasts roam. Continuing this way will cause officials to feel disheartened, and your majesty will be isolated from them. Not only that, but Zhang also seized the fertile fields of the farmers for his own use, forcibly taking other people's daughters as concubines. The common people harbored deep resentment towards him, believing that the country would never find peace due to his actions. Even the local officials had to act according to the wishes of Zhang's household servants whenever they arrived in a new place. Zhang's private letters, once sent, had the power to manipulate officials at all levels, making them prioritize personal interests over justice. He even adopted many protégés, who in turn supported their distant relatives. These relatives became unruly and tyrannical, riding in horse-drawn carriages that sped like the wind, wheels roaring like thunder. When they arrived in a location, if the local people didn't comply with their demands, they would whip them as punishment. The entire Zhang family oppressed the people, exploited the officials, leaving nothing untouched wherever they went. Now, Zhang believed himself to be favored by you, the emperor, in the court and showed no signs of remorse. Whenever you questioned him about state affairs in the palace, he would speak eloquently and cunningly. Yet, as soon as he returned home, he would indulge in pleasure in his garden. He was engrossed in indulging in sensual pleasures, leading a life of extravagance and debauchery, with no concern for the welfare of the nation and its people. Could a person like this really be qualified to hold the position of prime minister, such a high-ranking official? At present, the country is facing internal and external troubles, and the people cannot find peace. If you do not swiftly execute him, there will inevitably be a disaster, akin to the likes of Cao Cao and Wang Mang usurped the throne. I am consumed with worry day and night about this matter, unable to sleep in peace. Now, I am risking my life to reveal Zhang's crimes and deliver this letter, fully expecting to face execution, to inform you of the truth. I beseech you to order the beheading of Zhang, to seize all of his ill-gotten wealth, in order to quell the grievances of the people and officials. If any part of my words is false, I am willing to accept the harshest punishment, even if it means being chopped to pieces or boiled in oil. Upon hearing that Scholar Bao had accused him before the emperor, Zhang was overcome with terror, as if he had just been doused with icy water, and a chill ran down his spine. Fortunately, His Majesty was magnanimous and chose to hold back the memorial, not issuing any orders. Nevertheless, officials at all levels, including advisors and major administrators, continued to hound him relentlessly. They submitted memorials accusing Zhang to the emperor. Those students who once flocked to him, those who called him their benefactor, now deserted him upon sensing the shifting tides. Consequently, the emperor decreed the confiscation of Zhang's entire estate and banished him to Yunnan to be a slave. Zhang's son was appointed as the magistrate of Pingyang, and the officials had also been dispatched to interrogate and question him. Upon hearing the imperial edict, Zhang was filled with terror, and soon dozens of warriors, armed with swords and spears, entered his residence. They stripped him of his court attire and crown, then bound him and his wife together. Before long, several laborers began moving Zhang's possessions to the courtyard. In an instant, the yard was filled with jewels and gold and silver treasures, totaling millions. Precious gemstones, jade ornaments, agate, and other valuable items piled up, along with countless tents, curtains, and beds. Even baby quilts and women's embroidered shoes were left on the steps. As Zhang inspected each item, he felt a heartache for the extravagance, and every detail stabbed at his conscience. After a while, another person dragged out his beautiful concubine. She was disheveled, weeping, and dazed. A burning sorrow and anger surged within Zhang, yet he dared not utter a word. Shortly after, seals were affixed to towers and storehouses, and Zhang was ordered to leave his home. Escorts with ropes led him and his wife away, their tears flowing. Along the journey, they pleaded for a horse-drawn carriage to help them, but their pleas fell on deaf ears. After walking for over 10 miles, Zhang's wife grew weak and stumbled repeatedly, prompting Zhang to use one hand to support her while they moved forward. After another 10 miles, Zhang himself was exhausted. Suddenly, a towering mountain loomed ahead, its peak piercing the sky. Zhang worried he wouldn't be able to ascend it, so he held his wife's hand and they wept together. However, the escorts stared them down menacingly, urging them to continue without stopping. With the setting sun before them, and no place to rest for the night, they had no choice but to press on, limping and hobbling. When they reached the mountainside, Zhang's wife was depleted of energy and sat by the road, weeping. Zhang also halted, ignoring the scolding of the escorts. Suddenly, They heard a clamor in the distance. A group of bandits was approaching. Each one wielded sharp weapons and rushed toward them. The escorts were frightened and fled in a hurry. Unable to escape due to their bindings, Zhang and his wife kneeled, pleading, "We are criminals to be exiled to a desolate place, and our belongings have no value. Please spare us." Unexpectedly, the bandits, eyes blazing, retorted, "We are victims of your persecution, seeking only your treacherous head, nothing else." Zhang angrily retorted, "Although I am guilty and await judgment, I am still an official of the imperial court. How dare you bandits harm me?" Enraged, the bandits swung their axes at Zhang's neck. In an instant, his head rolled to the ground with a thud. As he tried to come to terms with the shocking situation, two little ghosts approached him and bound his hands, driving him forward on the journey. They walked for a while and entered a city. In an instant, Zhang saw a palace, where an ugly-looking king was seated at a desk, passing judgment on the arriving spirits, deciding their crimes and fates. Zhang approached, prostrating himself on the ground, begging for mercy. The king glanced through the records, and after just a few lines, he angrily exclaimed, "For your crime of deceiving the emperor and harming the country, you should be thrown into the boiling oil cauldron." The surrounding ghosts echoed in agreement like thunder. Immediately, a giant ghost grabbed Zhang and pulled him beneath the steps of the palace. There, an oil cauldron stood about 7 feet tall, surrounded by roaring charcoal flames that had turned the cauldron's legs red-hot. Trembling in fear, Zhang's whole body was in agony, and he wanted to escape but didn't know where to flee. The chief ghost gripped Zhang's hair with one hand and his feet with the other, tossing him into the oil cauldron. Falling into the cauldron, Zhang's body was tossed up and down with the boiling oil waves. His skin and flesh charred, and the pain was excruciating. Gasping for air, the boiling oil entered his mouth, scalding his internal organs. He yearned for a swift death, but found no release. After what felt like the time for a meal, a large fork retrieved Zhang from the cauldron. He was then thrown down before the palace. The king examined the records again and angrily declared, "For your oppressive behavior, you shall be subjected to the punishment of the Blade Mountain." Another giant ghost seized Zhang, and he saw a steep, towering mountain with sharp blades protruding like bamboo shoots. The cries of those impaled by the blades, their intestines hanging out, echoed horrifyingly. The giant ghost urged Zhang up the mountain, but he cried and retreated. With a poisoned spike, the giant ghost stabbed Zhang's skull, and despite the pain, he begged for mercy. The giant ghost's anger flared, and he lifted Zhang, hurling him into the air. Zhang felt himself ascend to the sky, then abruptly descend, impaling him on the blades. His chest ached horribly as the knives punctured his body. After a while, Zhang's body fell heavily once more, the wounds from the blades widening. He was dropped from the Blade Mountain, his limbs contorted from the pain. The giant ghost herded him to face the king again, who ordered the ghost scribes to tally up all the money Zhang had acquired through the sale of titles, unlawful appropriation of wealth, and more. A disheveled man with a beard stepped forward with an abacus, saying, 3,210,000. The king proclaimed, "Since it's his ill-gotten gains, let him drink it down." Soon, the collected copper coins were piled on the steps, forming hills that were gradually placed into a melting pot over intense heat. Several ghost attendants took turns using ladles to pour molten copper into Zhang's mouth. The copper scalded his cheeks, causing his skin to blister and stink. It flowed down his throat, boiling his internal organs. When he was alive, he always thought these riches were insufficient, yet now he found them overwhelming. After half a day, the copper was finally emptied into him. The king then ordered Zhang to be sent to Guangzhou, to be reincarnated as a woman. Zhang had just taken a few steps when he saw a massive iron beam on a rack. A gigantic fire wheel with a circumference of several feet was mounted on it, emitting flames of 5 colors that shot straight up into the sky. The ghost whipped Zhang, urging him to climb onto the fire wheel. As soon as Zhang closed his eyes and leapt onto the wheel, it began to rotate beneath his feet. He felt as though he was plummeting downward, a chilling sensation coursing through his body. When Zhang opened his eyes, he found himself transformed into the body of an infant, and not just any infant, but a girl. She saw her parents dressed in tattered clothes, their earthen house containing only begging bowls and sticks. In her heart, she understood that she had become the daughter of beggars. Every day, she followed her beggar parents to beg for food, her stomach growling loudly. Often, she couldn't even get a full meal. She wore ragged clothes that offered no protection against the bone-chilling winds. At the age of 14, her parents sold her to a scholar named Gu as a concubine. Finally, she had enough to eat and wear. However, Gu's first wife was extremely fierce, whipping her every day and even branding her chest with a hot iron. Fortunately, Mr. Gu treated her with great affection, which provided her some comfort. Once, a mischievous neighbor's son climbed over the wall, attempting to force himself upon her. She thought about her grave sins in her previous life and the severe punishment she had already suffered in the afterlife. How could she commit such an act again? She screamed loudly, startling both Gu and his first wife, causing the young rascal to flee. Not long after, Gu spent the night in her room. She lay on the bed, recounting her grievances and suffering when suddenly there was a loud noise. The door burst open, and 2 robbers with knives barged in. Astonishingly, they beheaded Gu and looted everything in the room. She shrank into a corner, hiding under the covers, too terrified to make a sound. Once the robbers left, she screamed and ran to the first wife's room. The first wife was shocked, and they both went to examine Gu's body, crying inconsolably. The first wife suspected that she and her lover had conspired to murder Gu. Filing a complaint, she reported the alleged crime to the local authorities. The local officials immediately subjected her to severe interrogation, even resorting to torture. Under duress, she confessed to the fabricated charges. According to the laws of the time, she was sentenced to be sliced. Bound and taken to the execution ground, her heart brimming with injustice, she stamped her feet and cried out her grievances. To her, this earthly realm appeared even darker than the 18 layers of hell in the afterlife. While Zhang was sobbing in distress, he heard his companions calling out to him. "Hey, buddy, were you having a nightmare?" In an instant, Zhang opened his eyes and woke up. He saw the old monk still seated on the mat, reciting scriptures. His companions were eager to tell him. "It's already dark outside, and we're hungry. How could you sleep for so long here?" Zhang then stood up with a mournful expression. The old monk smiled faintly and said to him, "Did your dream of becoming a prime minister come true?" Zhang was even more astonished and respectfully asked the old monk for guidance. The old monk told him, "As long as one possesses noble character and compassion, they will receive divine protection, even in difficult situations. I'm just a humble monk with limited knowledge." When Zhang arrived, he was full of arrogance and pride, but as he left, he couldn't help but hang his head in dejection. The thought of becoming a prime minister no longer crossed his mind. Eventually, word spread that Zhang had ventured into the mountains to practice Taoism, and his whereabouts remained unknown. At the end, the author added a commentary. It goes like this. Fortune smiles upon the virtuous, while misfortune befalls the wicked. This is the eternal way of nature. Zhang, hearing that he could become a prime minister, took pride in it, but such a person would never rejoice in making contributions to the country and its people. His heart was set on wealth, power, and sensual pleasures, and he hardly cared about the responsibilities and duties that came with the position. However, dreams are inherently illusory and unrealistic. Zhang imagined, and the divine utilized his imagination to guide him towards an answer. When people experience good fortune, such beautiful dreams are inevitably something they will pursue. Alright. That's all for today's ghostly tales. Continuation of the Yellow Millet Dream. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Please also encourage everyone to comment and share more. We'll see you in the next episode.